Today on Civically Minded, I have an interview with my special guest, artist and marketing director, as well as small business owner, Madison Carter. We're going to discuss things like Christians within the arts and what it means to be a small business owner, how to build community through faith and just hard work, as well as how being a business owner can interact with, for Madison, being a wife and a mother. Stay tuned for a wonderful episode of Civically Minded. Well, welcome back to Civically Minded. I'm your host, Corey Wing. I'm here today with my good friend, Madison Carter. She's an artist and kind of a freelance marketing
A little bit of
professional. Yeah,
everything,
she
yeah.
does a little bit of everything. Uh, Madison actually designed the logo for Civically Minded. So that is how we met. And she's done some work for my church as well and just become kind of a great resource. And I wanted to have her on today to talk a little bit about uh, what it's like for Christians in the arts and how we can build not just community but build Christ's kingdom through small business ownership and being able to free ourselves up to have more time for family, more time for worship, more time for civil engagement, and just wanted to kind of hear her take on some of those topics. So welcome, Madison.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about yourself
Yeah.
and kind of who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So I am from Charlotte, born and raised. I went to school at Western Carolina and met my husband, and we are now living in Concord, in a little historic house in downtown Concord. So that has its challenges living in an old home, but it's fun. And we have now a daughter, Sadie. She's a year and a half, and two puppies that we love dearly. And so yeah, I work from home now. I quit my full time job about 30 days ago, and I am doing some consulting work, freelance work, some design and marketing work with leadership teams. So, yeah, it's been a change of pace the past month. And so I'm just kind of soaking in the new season. So, yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, you've been involved in helping me get this off the ground
Yep.
and kind of have a better public face. And I can say from personal experience, when we first met, I had a couple harebrained ideas that I thought were gonna, really be eye catching,
Yeah.
and they weren't. Yeah, which is of no fault of hers. She did exactly what I asked, and I went, wow, that did not translate from my brain to paper
Yeah.
as well as I was hoping.
Yeah.
Um, so then we settled on what has now become the logo, and
Mhm.
and it's clean and it's simple and it's translatable and I've really it's been I feel it's a brand I can build on. So I
Yeah.
appreciate all
Yeah.
that you've done, and like I said, you've done some work for the church as well, and again much the same. There was some kind of trial and error, a couple ideas bounce back and forth, and then again kind of landed on something elegant and clean
Yeah.
and very translatable, something that's scalable, as far as you can
Absolutely.
do it small, large,
Yep.
and that's been so I've had nothing but good experiences with you
Appreciate
and
that.
highly recommend you to anyone watching who's here in
Love
the
it.
greater Charlotte area.
Yes.
But given the kind of work you do, I imagine that you could do work pretty
Yeah.
much
All over you.
wherever you want.
Yep.
So if someone's watching from another state or even further than that, they could,
Yeah.
reach out. We'll leave some ways for them to reach out to you, maybe some email and other things in the comment section. And if they'd like to reach out and learn a little bit more about what you do or have some projects that maybe they'd like you to work on, we'd
Please.
love that.
Yeah, that
So
would be amazing.
well, tell me a little bit more. You've just kind of left this job about 30 days ago, you said, and started your own thing.
Yeah,
As a
yeah,
Christian, tell me a little bit about how you view small business ownership, what that kind of looks like for you
yeah,
as a believer.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So I feel like I have a unique perspective. I've been in corporate America, I've been in small marketing agencies, I've been in big mega churches, playing different creative roles. And so now I've kind of settled in this place where I feel like I've gotten kind of my experience in those facets, and I'm using that to build my own small business now. And I ultimately like being a Christian has been something I've learned to do through my life. I grew up in church, and I'm kind of finding my footing in that now. And it's interesting. my small business is totally rooted in Christ, which is the first time I've really done that, if I'm being totally transparent. Being a Christian has always been just a facet of who I am
Yeah.
next to being in my career, and now this is the first time I'm stepping in and, like, letting that marriage happen where I'm letting Christ lead me in what I'm supposed to be doing in my career, and so it's just giving me a unique perspective in what my next step is, what my next day to day is, even the people that I work with and the opportunities that I say yes to. I'm very kind of particular about it and very specific about it. And yeah, so I think it's been a blessing leaning more into my Christianity, whereas maybe earlier in my life I would have kind of let that be the back burner a little bit because it is something where I've noticed it's turned people off a lot.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit more private about it, whereas now I feel a lot more open and accepting of that side of myself. And it's just been a huge blessing. And so yeah, it's just giving me a really unique perspective into why I didn't do this sooner. So, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well, I'd like to kind of follow up
yeah,
on something you said there, that
yeah,
I also worked for corporate America,
yep,
not that long ago.
yeah,
And with the onset of like cancel culture,
mhm,
and kind of
yeah,
how divided our nation has become politically, socially,
yeah,
religiously,
yeah,
in
yeah,
many ways, just culturally in
yeah,
general, it is increasingly difficult for a lot of people to find themselves being vocally Christian within the marketplace.
yes, absolutely.
And so I don't think what you've just, kind of enunciated as your own a personal journey is
Yeah,
that uncommon for our viewers. I think a lot of them that work in corporate spaces, or maybe are in the public school system
yeah,
or higher education or any number of things, even those who are business owners like
mhm,
yourself. I came from the real estate world, so a lot of them are, small business owners,
yeah,
even if they work for a larger company like Keller Williams or something like
yeah,
that. They really are managing their own book of business, and a lot of them even feel this real intense pressure to tamp that
to
down.
hide it. Yeah, mhm,
Even though we're in a society that says everyone should have, the most free speech
yeah,
possible. If you
yeah,
claim to be biologically something you weren't born as, if
mhm,
you claim to be, if I was
yeah,
into, hey, I'm a dog, I could vocalize that from a rooftop and I should be
yeah,
supported and celebrated.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, if you're a conservative Christian,
yeah,
let's keep that
mhm,
really, on the back burner, as you said.
yeah,
And so I appreciate you again being vulnerable and being honest with that, because I
yeah,
think that's a
yeah,
common experience that a lot of our
yeah,
audience is probably going to share.
yeah,
Tell me how being a small business owner, though, not just affects you as a Christian, as a wife and a mother. Have
mhm,
you seen a difference now
yeah.
being able to kind of call your own shots versus having someone else kind of say jump and you have to say, okay, when and how high?
Yeah, it's given me a lot of freedom in my day to day, and yeah, being able to spend time with Sadie has just been like a huge blessing. And we talked about this a little bit before, but she's in a time where she's in school half the day, and so that gives me time to get the work done that I need to get work done,
Yeah.
and then I'm a little bit more available mentally, emotionally, physically with her in the afternoons. And so that's been really interesting just to watch our relationship change. Um, yeah, we're just more in tune with each other, and it gives me more opportunity to make sure that I'm more readily available at the end of the day instead of being burnt out and exhausted and frustrated and maybe short fused by the end of the day.
Yeah.
I have more opportunities for myself to get the work done I need to get done, make sure I wanted to get done the things that I needed to around the house. And so I'm ready to be a mom and a wife at the end of the day because I feel like I got fulfilled earlier in the day instead of basically running through burnout every day in an 8 to 5.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, it's been good.
It's been my experience as well,
Yeah,
since leaving corporate America about a year ago or so now for me, a little less than a year ago.
yeah,
It is my not that I had a bad relationship with my kids.
yeah,
I
yeah,
and I don't think that's what you were saying either, but
yeah,
that the availability,
yes,
and not
yeah,
just physically. You're
yeah,
right. It is an emotional, spiritual, mental
yeah,
availability and acuity that you have left over at the end of the day,
yeah,
because you didn't have all of these other external taxations placed upon you, some of which you wouldn't have chosen, right?
correct, correct,
So
yeah,
I applaud you for that.
yeah,
Want to pivot just a little bit. Uh, tell me, I mean, you're in the arts.
Yep.
Yeah, obviously
Yep.
you did some design work for me, as I've stated now.
Mhm.
Uh, I think that the arts uniquely have become, and I say have become because I don't think this is historically accurate. You know,
Mhm.
we see like Michelangelo
Mhm.
and Da Vinci and a number of folks in the arts historically
Yeah.
during, like, say, the Renaissance era
Yeah.
would have confessed Christ.
Mhm.
Would have been more Christian leaning.
Yeah.
But I think the arts in the last, say, 100 years or maybe even less than that have become almost a no fly zone for Christians,
Mhm.
and we have increasingly retreated from the arts and kind of made secondary or even tertiary artwork, whether that's in music or film
Mhm.
or visual arts of any capacity, and we've allowed that to kind of become the world's playground.
Yeah.
And they do the best music, they do the best film, they do the best whatever,
Mhm.
and we just kind of tag along. And so, give me your take as an artist
Yeah.
in how Christianity is either faring
Yeah.
or how we can get better
Yeah.
about kind of recapturing some of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually I just went on a Christian creative women's retreat, and these are women who are painters and songwriters and, very traditional forms of art. And so I was the only one who was kind of more of a digital artist there. And so um this is a group of women who are actually pouring into that and leaning into that to use that creative expression to kind of talk to the Lord and see, you know, using your gifts basically to draw other people to the Lord. And so they're based in Boone. And so I got the opportunity to speak with painters who are like beautiful Christian women who I'd never met a painter who was a believer before.
Yeah.
I grew up, very creative. My dad's an architect. I went to art school, and it was a very liberal experience, which I'm very grateful for, and a lot of that kind of formed me into who I am today, but it has been kind of like almost like a taboo thing
Yep.
among Christians where it's like, getting out paint and it's just a tactile material just to use your hands and your feet or whatever else you wanna use and just express yourself. And so I don't understand how that turned into something that's gotten to be so taboo with Christians. I think it's beautiful and I love it. And yeah, I have beautiful artwork in my home now because I've leaned more into that side. And I, especially like landscape artists specifically, like they're literally drawing what's been created around them. I don't understand how that could be anything taboo. So yeah, it's been interesting leaning more into that and talking with those women specifically, and, um, it just encouraged me to be more creative and doing a lot more sketching of my own and getting back into my roots of art school. So, yeah, art school for me was, learning how to be an artist and not so much a businesswoman. So I learned the business side myself, and now I'm going back into kind of my artist roots.
Reconnecting
So
with the
it's
art. Yeah.
interesting what I was trained to do, I stayed away from. Now I've learned the business side, and I'm kind of, like, letting myself be a little bit more free with
That's amazing.
the
That's
arts.
amazing.
Yeah.
I think uh, just being in the Christian world kind of all the time now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my full
Yeah.
time job. I'm
Yeah.
I'm on staff at a church.
Yep.
I'm doing this podcast. I'm very immersed into kind of this Christian subculture,
Yeah.
and there's things I think we get very right.
Yeah.
And of course, as you've just kind of said, there's things that we get quite wrong because, again, we've shied away from them for whatever reason. Landscape artwork is, you wouldn't have known this, but it's one of my favorites. I live in a rural setting.
Yeah.
We go to the mountains a lot.
Yeah.
I love to be in nature. I connect with God a lot in nature.
Yep.
I think Romans 1 and other passages talk about that God uses the general revelation of nature
Mhm.
to speak to human beings, even the non-believers.
Yeah.
And sadly, one day we'll use creation and landscape and all of the things that He's given us in the natural world as even something that will condemn them. So I mean, I think there's something very powerful about what you said there. Um, but I immediately, because of my own, kind of work now in the church and just in the world, I think of paganism.
Mm.
And I think we as Christians get so afraid of certain things that we throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Mhm.
So since Wicca and paganism,
Mhm.
which is really back on the rise, oddly
Mhm.
enough,
Mhm.
there's a real resurgence of witchcraft and that type of thing, both in Europe and here in America. And of course, a lot of them are naturalists.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so they spend a lot of time in nature and druidic backgrounds and things like that. And so I think as Christians, we just kind of do this knee jerk reaction of, well, then I don't want to be associated with that.
Yeah.
And I think, well, they don't get to have that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel very similarly about like the rainbow,
Yeah.
and that it's
Mhm.
been so co-opted
Mhm.
for a certain demographic of our population. And I think, well, but wait a minute, the rainbow, if you go back to Genesis,
Mhm.
was given as a promise by God
Yeah.
that he would not flood and destroy the earth again.
Yeah.
I think we as Christians need to stop allowing the lost communities to co-opt our things,
Mhm.
whether it's something as beautiful as artwork, or I look during those really difficult years we had just 2 or 3 years ago during the height of
Mhm.
COVID.
Yeah.
And I remember getting in a lot of discussions during that time with non-believers who were getting so very angry at certain people
Mhm.
because they wouldn't get, the jab, or they wouldn't wear masks as often as that
Mhm.
person might want them to. And, you're just going to kill people. You're going to, all these elderly people are dying and it's quote your fault.
Mhm.
And I remember having a discussion with one of them and saying, well, wait a second.
Yeah.
Why do you think human life is valuable?
Yeah.
You don't believe in God.
Mhm.
You're an atheist.
Mhm.
If we're just random particles of stardust bumping into each other,
Yeah.
we have no real
Mhm.
inherent or innate beauty and meaning because we're not created in the image of God, in your point of view,
Yeah.
then what exactly are you angry about?
Yeah.
This is usually the same crowd that's pro abortion,
Yeah.
and in
Mhm.
other countries, even does things like killing off the elderly.
Yeah.
You know, why all of a sudden are you so pro
Mhm.
life?
Mhm.
And most of them, if they're honest with themselves, they don't really have a real solid moral standing or footing that,
Mhm.
well, culturally,
Yeah.
well, but some cultures don't value life much at all,
Yeah.
historically speaking.
Yeah.
So I do find it amazing that we so often allow the lost community to co-op so much of what we've brought to bear on the world, whether it's Western values and rule of law and
Mhm.
just intrinsic beauty,
Yeah.
which are inherently God-given gifts.
Yeah.
So I find it very valuable and helpful that you say as an artist you've seen that,
Yeah.
you've experienced it in art school,
Yeah.
and that we as Christians certainly can do a better job of kind of reclaiming some of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me specifically, I mean, if that's overarchingly how the arts can potentially start to be again reclaimed by Christianity, give me a very kind of personal, maybe visceral, individual, what this would look like for Madison.
Yeah.
How can you use your God-given talents and gifts
Yeah.
to help build community,
Yeah.
to help bless the church, to help bless other, maybe individual believers,
Yeah.
and kind of that would be one question, and then tack onto that, how could it be used maybe even in an evangelistic way?
Yeah. Yeah. I I love people. I love learning people's gifts, their spiritual gifts, what they were kind of born to do. And so I see that as a form of art and being creative. And I am in the process of starting a business that I believe is from the Lord that I'm supposed to be doing. Um creating a business that is all it's meant to do is be a resource to nonprofits. And so the basics of that for me is I want to use my talents to help other people who are pouring into people that they feel passionate about. And so I feel like this is just my small way where I can connect with a wide range of people and
Yeah.
provide my spiritual gift and my creativity and design and other things that I feel like I can bring to the table, and something that comes easily to me might not come naturally to other people. And so I can't do what they do, that variety and that wide span, but I can help one individual at a time and then they can spread from there. And so that's kind of what I'm in the process of just being prayerful about and trying to be really intentional. And I've got some really wonderful creative women that I'm working with who have their own spiritual gifts and the creative realm, and they are partnering with me to help these nonprofit leaders.
Awesome.
And so that's been really exciting, and that's been an amazing community builder that I had no idea was even possible. So, um, yeah, I thought it was gonna be a small group of people that I was gonna be able to help, and it's just grown exponentially. And so, yeah, just trying to follow that path, and um, I'm just trying to be intentional and kind. I've always been very quiet in my Christianity, and I'm kind of stepping into having a little bit more of a voice there and building my confidence. And so I always want to approach people with kindness and
Mm.
love and heart so they know me at the root. And so they're not turned off by my Christianity, because I have seen that where I have said, "Oh, I'm a Christian," and then instantly they don't want to work with me. And so I feel like once you get that tear where people don't wanna work with you because you're a Christian, there's no way to build a relationship there. And so I'm trying to view it as like, I don't wanna hide my Christianity, but I wanna show them who I am, show the Lord through me and my actions, let them build the trust, and then as it comes out naturally in the relationship, it's harder to kind of like tear that bond because we're already
Yeah,
so connected. And so that's been really fun just to kind of, like, play with that a little bit and be prayerful about that. And, um, yeah, I'm getting to meet and talk to people that I normally wouldn't because of my faith, and so that's been really fun and interesting just to let that play out. So, yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Wonderful
So,
answer.
yeah.
So, what else could how could Christians maybe come alongside, whether it's yourself
Yeah.
or again other artists, even other just small business owners, maybe not in the arts at all. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Christian restaurant owners,
Yeah.
Christian daycare operators. You know
Yeah.
what? How can we as Christian community? Because again, I look outside of the Christian community,
Yeah.
especially in some more ethnocentric communities. You know, I think of uh, you go to certain parts of like a big city like New York,
Mhm.
and you have Chinatown, and you
Mhm.
have Little Italy, and you
Mhm.
have kind of the Jewish sector, and they really do kind of
Yeah.
commune together, and they do a lot of business together,
Yeah.
and because of that, they succeed in ways that it would be very difficult to do if it was, well, this guy's over here operating by himself and she's
Yeah.
over here running a business by herself. And,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what cues do you think that we could take that would be beneficial or helpful in saying, again, not saying I'm never going to do business with a non-believer again. Of course, that's
Mhm.
one, that's silly, it's
Yeah.
impractical,
Yeah.
but it's also not effective commissionally.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Yeah.
have been given the commission by God
Yeah.
to go into all the world and preach the gospel,
Yeah.
to disciple the nations. And obviously we have to interact with non-believers to do that,
Yep. Yeah.
but how can we do both, I
Yeah.
guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be difficult. Um, I have a lot of church hurt. I know a lot of my friends who are not believers have a lot of church hurt. They grew up in church. And the fact that, like, that's even a phrase, church hurt, is where I think we have failed. And so it's hard even, like, talking about believers and non-believers because it's, like, it's segregating instantly right there. That's the line that's been drawn. You either believe or you don't, which that's true. But when you're talking with a person and a human and that's still who they are at their core. If you are a believer, you know that they were created by God
Yeah.
at the root of it, even if they don't believe that. You believe that. And so I think some of it is just meeting them where they are and building that connection and, like, just seeing where it goes, you know what I mean? Instead of just slamming the door in their face because they don't believe, which is the easiest thing to do. Just knowing them and loving them and being in prayer about them and, you know, letting God handle the rest of it. But just, like, being the hands and the feet and just honestly just seeing where it goes. And so I think it's gotten scary for a lot of people.
Mm.
And so a lot of the times if I say that I'm a Christian to somebody, even my friends now who I'm more openly about my Christianity, like, they've spent a lot of time knowing me, and so they're not gonna, like, say, "Oh, I can't be friends with you anymore because now you're, more open about your faith." But people there is a stigma about Christianity now, and I think that's happened over the years because of you have people who are really angry Christians almost about the state of the world, and I think they have a right to be angry, but not at the expense of another person. And I think that's where we have failed a little bit, is that just because somebody doesn't believe the same things that you believe doesn't mean they weren't created by God.
Yeah,
And so how that's to me where the hard part is like, how do you meet them where they are and still be kind to them, not agree with what they're doing, the actions, their beliefs, but, I'm not saying you're gonna save them, you as a person, but showing them kindness and showing them that even though we're not on the same level, I still love you, God still loves you, and, yeah, just seeing where a partnership and a friendship can lead, I think, is a really beautiful piece, and so that's what I feel like my spiritual gift is people and community and talking and building connection, and so that's what I really lean into in my day-to-day and my conversations, so
that's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
There's a Christian author. I think he's based out of kind of the Indianapolis, Indiana area, by the name of Aaron Wrenn, and he recently wrote a book called Negative World.
Mhm.
And his premise of the book is that, very similar to a lot of what you were just saying, that there was positive world, kind of neutral world, and then negative world.
Yeah.
And he's writing it, of course, as a believer, and he's saying this as the experience in America with the Christian community.
Yeah.
And he says, for most of America's history, we were, as Christians, in positive world, meaning Christianity was looked on positively, even if you weren't a Christian or a practicing religious person, even.
Mhm. Yeah.
You had pretty positive feelings about Christianity and about Christians. And then he says we entered into kind of a neutral zone where it was kind of, eh, I'm okay, you're okay. I
Mhm.
mean, I've heard him say, a Christian would say, "I'm a Christian," and the other guy would say, "Well, I'm a vegan,"
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
would, kind of like,
Yeah.
"Hey,"
Yeah.
And he says that now we've entered into kind of negative world, which is basically what you're saying, that
Yeah.
there's a lot of baggage, there's a lot of negative feelings, negative connotations,
Yeah.
some of which you're absolutely right we've brought on.
Yeah.
I literally, my sermon from Sunday touched on some of that, and
Yeah.
it's here on my page if anyone wants to go watch it.
Yeah.
Um, where there really is hurt. We've hurt each other, we've hurt others.
Yeah.
Um, we're sometimes not as graceful or as tactful as we could be,
Yeah.
because the message we have is not always an easy message.
Yeah.
Telling someone, "Hey, yes, God loves you, and the proof of His love for you was that He sent His Son to die on the cross, and the only reason He had to do that was because we're broken, we're
Yeah.
sinful.
Yeah.
You have offended a holy God, and that has to be dealt with."
Yeah.
So bless his holy name. He did deal with it. He sent Christ.
Yeah.
So you don't have to bear the weight of your own sin. That's a challenging thing to communicate to people.
Yeah.
And the Bible does say that we need to do it with grace and as much magnanimity and love as we possibly can. So I find it, again, very helpful that
Yeah.
you said, this is how you try to approach your day-to-day life, whether
Yeah.
it's your business life or even just probably your
Yeah.
personal social life, of
Yeah.
interacting with people kind of where they're at,
Yeah.
and then understanding it is not our job as Christians to do the converting.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I just have to be obedient to
Yeah.
open my mouth when God tells me to.
Yeah.
And then it's the Holy Spirit's job to take whatever fumbling thing I may fumble through and
Yes.
say, and massage that
Yeah.
into their hearts,
Yep.
and use it in a way that I couldn't possibly do, right? So Madison, thank you so much for your time this
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
Thank you for kind of an insight into your world. It's not a world I know anything about,
Yeah.
and for taking the leap of faith,
Yeah.
about 30 days ago, to kind of do something that's really scary.
Yeah. Oh,
The older you get, and you get married and you start having children, you have all these responsibilities, that now, wow, there is this little human being that is depending upon me and my husband to
yeah.
provide for them and
Yeah.
to raise them, and so to step out from your comfortable,
Yeah.
you know guaranteed paycheck
Yeah.
to do something on your own.
Yeah.
I admire that. I,
Yeah.
I think it's a very, noble thing to do,
Yeah.
and I just want to wish you the best in it,
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
say I'm cheering for you. We're
Thank
praying
you.
for you,
Yeah.
and certainly if there's anything we here can do to bless you, or help you in your furthering of this business and this ministry,
Yeah.
we'd sure love it.
I absolutely love it. I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you,
So
Madison.
yeah.
Well, that's our interview. Come back later this week. I'm going to do another episode of The Right Wing. We're going to talk some politics. We've got, here in my home state of North Carolina, we have the primaries coming up, as soon as next week. So the North Carolina Republican primaries are next week, and so it's going to be a lot of tectonic shifts happening here in my home state next week. So we're going to talk about that a little later, probably today, and then I've got a surprise guest that I'm hoping to have in the coming weeks for another interview session. So thanks so much. If you like what we're doing here on Civically Minded, please think about liking, subscribing, hitting the notification bell so you know whenever we drop something new. And God bless.